On the morning of January 15th, 1947, a mother named Betty Bersinger was walking with her young daughter through a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood called Leimert Park. That's when she noticed something in a vacant lot, just a few feet from the sidewalk. At first, she thought it was a store mannequin. The skin was unnaturally pale, almost white. But as she got closer, she realized she was looking at the body of a young woman, cut completely in half at the waist, drained of every drop of blood, and posed as if she were on display. This is the story of Elizabeth Short, the woman the world would come to know as the Black Dahlia. What Betty Bersinger stumbled upon that morning would become one of the most infamous, unsolved murders in American history. Elizabeth Short's body was found at 3800 South Norton Avenue. She was lying face up, her arms positioned above her head, elbows bent at right angles. Her legs were spread apart. The killer had bisected her body with surgical precision, slicing cleanly through the waist without damaging any internal organs except the intestines. The backbone was cut with a single powerful stroke. But the most disturbing detail? Her face. The killer had carved 3-inch incisions from each corner of her mouth to her ears, creating what's known as a Glasgow smile. There was no blood at the scene, not a single drop. This told investigators something critical. Elizabeth Short had been murdered somewhere else, then transported to this vacant lot and carefully arranged. Near the body, police found a cement sack with traces of watery blood, likely used to carry her remains. They also found a single heel print in the dirt, but no witnesses, no murder weapon, and no identification on the body. The Los Angeles Police Department had a body but no idea who she was. This is where the FBI enters the story and pulls off something remarkable. The LAPD needed to identify the victim fast. They lifted her fingerprints, but there was a problem. Sending prints to the FBI in Washington by mail would take days. That's when the Los Angeles Examiner newspaper offered a solution. They had a new technology called a sound photo machine, essentially a primitive fax that transmitted images over telephone lines. The LAPD sent the victim's blurred fingerprints to FBI headquarters. And in just 56 minutes, the FBI had a match. They compared those prints against 104 million fingerprint records in their database, and they found not one, but 2 matches. The first was from a 1943 arrest in Santa Barbara for underage drinking. Elizabeth was only 19 at the time. The second was from a job application. She had applied to work as a clerk at Camp Cook, an Army base in California. As part of the National Defense Program, she had to be fingerprinted. Now the police had a name, Elizabeth Short, age 22, born July 29, 1924 in Boston, Massachusetts. And when reporters saw her photograph, they knew they had a story that would grip the nation. She was beautiful, young, an aspiring actress who had come to Hollywood chasing her dreams. The press gave her a name that would echo through history, the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth Short was the third of 5 daughters born to Cleo and Phoebe Short in Boston. Her childhood was marked by tragedy. Her father had been a successful businessman who built miniature golf courses. But when the stock market crashed in 1929, he lost everything. In 1930, Cleo Short's car was found abandoned near a bridge. The family assumed he had committed suicide. But years later, Elizabeth discovered the truth. Her father was alive, living in California. He had simply abandoned his family. At 19, Elizabeth traveled to California to reconnect with him, but their reunion was short-lived. After a fight, her father kicked her out. From then on, Elizabeth drifted. She worked as a waitress, a cashier, she dated servicemen, she stayed with friends, acquaintances, sometimes strangers. She was last seen alive on January 9, 1947, getting out of a car at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. 6 days later, her body was found in that vacant lot. What happened during those 6 missing days remains a mystery. The investigation into Elizabeth Short's murder was one of the largest in Los Angeles history. Over 750 law enforcement officers worked the case, including LAPD detectives, sheriff's deputies, and California State Patrol. The precision of the cuts on Elizabeth's body led investigators to believe the killer had medical training. The FBI helped the LAPD obtain lists of medical students from the University of Southern California. Tips flooded into the FBI. Director J. Edgar Hoover personally signed responses to letters from citizens claiming to know the killer's identity. One letter, dated January 19, 1947, listed 8 specific characteristics of the killer. Ex-Marine, Caucasian, red hair, 28 to 30 years old, about 160 pounds, 5 foot 10 inches, Irish or English heritage. A suspect matching this exact description was eventually found and questioned. He passed 2 lie detector tests. The last person known to have seen Elizabeth alive was Robert "Red" Manley, a married salesman she had briefly dated. He was arrested on January 19th. After intense interrogation, including administration of sodium pentothal, a so-called truth serum, Manley was cleared and released. Then came the letters. On January 21st, a man called the Los Angeles Examiner newspaper. He claimed to be Elizabeth's killer. He congratulated the editor on the paper's coverage and promised to turn himself in eventually. But first, he wanted to watch the police chase him. "Expect some souvenirs of Beth Short in the mail," he said. 3 days later, a manila envelope arrived at the Examiner. The address was spelled out in letters cut from newspaper headlines. "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." Inside were Elizabeth's birth certificate, her social security card, photographs, business cards, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen embossed on the cover. Several pages had been torn out of that address book, pages that might have contained the killer's name. The contents had been soaked in gasoline, likely to destroy fingerprints, but investigators managed to lift a few partial prints from the envelope. The FBI ran those prints through their database. No match. The killer wasn't in the system. More letters followed. One postcard read, "Had my fun at police, Black Dahlia Avenger." Another offered a deal. "I will give up in Dahlia killing if I get 10 years. Don't try to find me." The letters eventually stopped. The killer, if it was truly the killer sending them, was never identified. Over the decades, more than 500 people have confessed to killing the Black Dahlia. None of those confessions have been proven true. The most compelling suspect emerged in 1999, when retired LAPD detective Steve Hodel began investigating his own father. Dr. George Hodel was a prominent Los Angeles physician. After his death, Steve found photographs of a woman who looked remarkably like Elizabeth Short among his father's belongings. In 1950, police had actually bugged George Hodel's home during an unrelated investigation. On the recording, Hodel was heard saying, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now." George Hodel was never charged. He fled to the Philippines shortly after and never returned. Other suspects have included Mark Hansen, the nightclub owner whose address book was found in that envelope, and Leslie Dillon, a bellhop and former mortician's assistant who provided details about the murder that only someone connected to the case would know. All were questioned. None were ever charged. Today, 77 years after Elizabeth Short's body was found in that vacant lot, her murder remains officially unsolved. The FBI has released over 200 pages of documents from their investigation. Most of the original evidence, including the killer's letters, has been lost to time. Elizabeth Short came to Hollywood dreaming of becoming a star. Instead, she became the victim of one of America's most brutal, unsolved murders and a symbol of Hollywood's dark side. The Black Dahlia case remains open. The killer was never found, and probably never will be. If this case haunts you as much as it haunts investigators, hit that subscribe button. We cover cold cases and unsolved mysteries every week.